This is the CBS Sunday Night News. Bill Plant reporting. Good evening. As the monumental tragedy of the earthquake in Armenia continued to unfold tonight, disaster struck again in Mexico City. An explosion in a street market packed with people buying illegal fireworks set off a chain reaction. At least 52 are reported dead, dozens more injured. At least 14 of those killed are children, and Red Cross workers on the scene say they are still finding bodies. Soviet sources now say the death toll in Armenia may be as high as 70,000. Other unofficial estimates say the toll could reach 100,000. Adding to the tragedy, a Soviet relief plane carrying soldiers crashed on landing in the area, killing all 78 aboard. Soviet leader Gorbachev has spent the last 2 days dealing with the sorrow and the anger of Armenia, as Barry Peterson reports.
Today, the focus was on the living, trying to find those still alive in the piles of rubble. A dozen in this building. And this is a city of fallen buildings. People on the scene complain there isn't enough equipment. One Western journalist said there is little Soviet military presence, that much of the coordination is being done by Swiss and French rescue teams. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev and his wife Raisa spent the weekend walking through the hardest hit areas and were confronted by angry Armenians. Where is the heavy equipment? Why didn't our scientists predict this? We will bring more equipment, more help, he vowed. I went to Spitak, Gorbachev said, referring to the hardest hit city where now there is almost nothing left. It is difficult, he said, to even speak about this. The international relief effort continues, planes pouring into the area. Throughout the Soviet Union, people are donating clothes. Heavy equipment is being shipped in. For so many here, it is a matter of waiting amidst the confusion. They stand near the ruins, near where they last saw their loved ones. They stand and hope and wait. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
Soviet as well as U.S. officials are calling the size of the relief effort unprecedented since the war. More from Anthony Mason in Moscow.
When Armenians in Moscow gathered outside their church this morning, the message was urgency. Listen, please, the man says. Time is precious, and many people still need our help. Tonight, international aid continued to arrive. A scheduled British Airways passenger jet brought medical supplies to Moscow. The pilot even donated some blankets. And Soviet officials have kept in constant touch with the U.S. Embassy here, supplying a detailed list of their needs.
This is the most important American assistance effort here since the war. So it's unprecedented in the memory and experience of anyone here.
The massive relief effort has drawn every ounce of this nation's energy. Armenians especially have been so busy trying to help, they've barely had time to mourn. They've sent their money, their clothing, and their prayers. But in Moscow this morning, for 1 hour they stopped and filled a small Armenian church with their despair. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
The Soviet-backed Afghan government said today that Pakistani warplanes shot down a commercial airliner in eastern Afghanistan. It said all 25 on board were killed. Still ahead on the CBS Sunday Night News, the press and the president meeting the Fourth Estate one last time. The disaster in Armenia has touched the hearts of millions of Americans. They're responding with offers of sympathy, prayers, and money. Ron Allen in Washington has our report.
President Reagan paid a rare visit to the Soviet embassy early this evening and seemed moved by the stark photographs of the Armenian earthquake's aftermath. In the Soviet Book of Condolences, he wrote, "All our people share your sorrow." President-elect Bush's thoughts were also on the Armenians as he and Mrs. Bush began decorating their holiday tree.
I'll tell you one thing you do, even though it's early, begin to count your blessings when you see the terrible tragedy.
Come here, Bill. Come here.
At churches across the country, America's small Armenian community came together in song and prayer.
my God, why hast thou forsaken us?
Good afternoon, Armenian Diocese.
Donations of food, clothing, and other supplies have been pouring into relief centers which have sprung up around the country.
We are asking primarily for monetary donations at this time because we are not yet exactly sure of what they need.
And in Southern California, where the largest number of Armenians live in this country, a local television station raised some $3 million during a telethon. While Armenians await word from loved ones, relief officials continue trying to make arrangements to deliver donations. Soviet officials, unaccustomed to seeking disaster relief, seem stunned but grateful for the American response. Ron Allen, CBS News, Washington.
To debate the Palestine issue. The change of venue will allow a key player to join in, but as Tom Fenton in London reports, the move carries a big price tag.
A near bankrupt United Nations will spend close to $500,000 to move the General Assembly to Geneva to hear Yasser Arafat on Tuesday. Prevented from addressing the UN in New York by Secretary of State Schultz's denial of a visa, the PLO chairman hopes for a diplomatic triumph in Geneva. Israel's decision to strike a blow against Palestinian forces in Lebanon last week, an attempt that almost went wrong, has done nothing to hurt Arafat's new image as a peacemaker. Last month in Algiers, Arafat led the Palestinian parliament in exile in declaring an independent Palestinian state. The PLO also implicitly recognized the existence of the State of Israel. Last week in Stockholm, after meeting with a group of American Jews, that recognition became more explicit.
The Palestinian parliament, the PNC, had accepted two states, Palestine state and Jewish state, between brackets, Israel.
The PLO is working behind the scenes to have two crucial UN resolutions introduced at Geneva. One recognizes the declaration of an independent Palestinian state. The other calls for a UN-sponsored peace conference that would bring together on an equal footing both Israel and the PLO. Israel opposes both resolutions. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
The United States is suffering from a shortage of nurses. Tomorrow, as Lynn Brown reports, a federal panel that's been diagnosing the situation will write a prescription.
The Nursing Commission is expected to call for higher salaries, increased involvement by nurses in patient care decisions, and a better public image.
They're feeling very stressed, and the lack of recognition of these factors within the work environment. Very frequently, the nurses will tell us that nobody values their opinion.
Despite the negative image, registered nurses like Marjorie Dixon say without their efforts, dozens of patients at inner-city healthcare centers would not be seen.
We're at the point now where no one can be out for any reason, illness, vacation, emergency. No one can be off.
Also causing problems for the nursing profession, increased tensions between doctors and nurses. Over the objections of nurses, the American Medical Association this past week approved a proposal to create a new class of bedside nurse called a registered care technologist who would report directly to doctors. Nurses are hoping the report tomorrow will call for action and not just become another government document gathering dust on the shelf. Lynn Brown, CBS News, Washington.
Drunk driving accidents killed more than 23,000 Americans last year. Their families remembered them tonight at a candlelight vigil in St. Paul, Minnesota. Also attending, a group of DWI offenders ordered there by a judge to see firsthand the pain and suffering caused by drunk driving. Last Thursday night, something which has become a relatively rare event. It was the last formal news conference of Ronald Reagan's 8-year presidency. 48 or so meetings with the press, depending on how you count, but no matter how you count, far fewer than most recent chief executives. Mr. Reagan's former spokesman claims his boss enjoyed the give and take, but he admitted there was tension when the going got tough.
I think the president constantly had his guard up, though. Anybody does, because when you're president, any word you say is instant news.
So reporters shouted questions on the run, and the White House began calling these encounters press availabilities, even though there were often no answers. A number of Mr. Reagan's former aides have said that the more often he prepared for a news conference, the better informed he was, which led an academic panel to this conclusion.
If President Reagan had met regularly with the press, he probably would not have had an Iran-Contra scandal.
And what about the next 4 years? George Bush has had lots of informal give and take with reporters since his election. But during his campaign, he was unavailable for days at a time.
He wanted his message delivered to the American people in a prefabricated way through political commercials or contrived photo ops.
Mrs. Bush was giving some similar advice today.
That teaches you a good lesson, though, doesn't it? Don't give any interviews. You get good press.
So, stay tuned. That's the CBS Sunday Night News. I'm Bill Plant. See you on the White House beat. Good night.
I'm Harry Smith. Tomorrow, a real football hero, a college player who was shot protecting children. Also, Leslie Nielsen and Lorenzo Lamas on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
This week on